Aunt told me to stop dreaming and get a real job. Now she's begging me to hire her son. The bakery was silent except for the soft patter of my tears hitting Mom's recipe book. The leather-bound journal, worn thin from years of flipping pages with flour-dusted fingers, was the only thing I had left of her. Well, that, and this crumbling building with its peeling paint and outdated ovens. Lily would have wanted better for you, Emma. Aunt Brenda's voice cut through my grief, sharp as a bread knife. I didn't look up. The recipe for Mom's signature raspberry chocolate scones blurred beneath my tears. It's been 2 weeks. When are you planning to snap out of this? Wallowing? I traced my fingers over Mom's handwriting, the loops and curves as familiar to me as her smile had been. I'm not wallowing, I said quietly. I'm planning. Planning what, exactly? Aunt Brenda scoffed, her designer heels clicking against the worn linoleum as she circled the kitchen like a vulture. To sell this place, I hope. God knows it's the only sensible thing to do. I finally looked up. At 17, orphaned and alone, I probably looked pathetic clutching Mom's recipe book. But something inside me, the same stubborn streak Mom always said I'd inherited from my father, refused to break under Aunt Brenda's gaze. I'm going to rebuild it, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Reopen Lily's bakery. Make it successful again. For a moment, Aunt Brenda's perfectly composed face cracked with genuine surprise. Then she laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that echoed off the empty display cases. Oh, Emma. Dreams are for fools like you. She adjusted her designer watch, checking the time. Your mother wasted her life in this flour-covered prison, and look where it got her. Worked herself to death at 43, with nothing to show for it but debt and a rundown bakery. Each word stung, but I bit my lip, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry again. Mom hadn't wasted her life. She'd poured love into every loaf, every pastry. The bakery had been struggling lately, yes, but only because of her illness. The medical bills had drained what little savings we had. Brandon, Aunt Brenda called sharply, making me flinch. We're going to be late for your interview. My cousin Brandon sauntered in from the storefront, his prep school uniform immaculate, his expression bored. At 18, he was only a year older than me, but the gulf between us might as well have been decades. While I'd spent my afternoons and weekends helping Mom at the bakery, Brandon had been sailing, playing lacrosse, and building the perfect college application. Hey, Cousin Crumbs, he smirked, eyeing my flour-dusted jeans and oversized sweatshirt. The nickname was from childhood, but it had lost its affection years ago, turning cruel on his tongue. Brandon has an interview at Westmore Prep, Aunt Brenda announced as if I'd asked. They're considering him for a leadership scholarship. After that, it's Princeton, then Harvard Business School. That's what a real future looks like. I swallowed hard, unable to meet Brandon's smug gaze. My own college application sat half-finished in a folder upstairs. With Mom gone, even community college seemed impossible now. You better stop dreaming and get a real job, Aunt Brenda continued, checking her reflection in the stainless steel of the industrial mixer. The bank will foreclose on this place within months. You think at 17 you can run a business? You can barely run a cash register. That wasn't true. I'd been handling the bakery's books since Mom got sick, learning by necessity what she couldn't teach me. I'd mastered every recipe, opened and closed the shop alone on her bad days, handled deliveries and orders. But Aunt Brenda had never noticed. She'd been too busy posting photos of Brandon's achievements on Facebook. I know what I'm doing, I said, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. I've been part of this bakery my whole life. Playing bakery isn't the same as running one, she sighed, exasperated. Emma, be realistic. You're a child. Sell this place, use the money for college, and find a sensible career. Law, medicine, finance, something that can actually provide security. She didn't understand. This bakery wasn't just a building or a business. It was the heart of everything Mom had created. Every corner held memories. Learning to braid challah at 6, the Christmas we accidentally used salt instead of sugar in the cookie dough, the day Mom taught me her secret technique for laminating pastry. Selling it would be like selling pieces of her. I'm not selling, I said. Brandon snorted. Then you're even dumber than you look. Brandon, Aunt Brenda chided, but her lips twitched with a suppressed smile. She checked her watch again. We need to go. Emma, lock up when you leave. And think about what I said. Your mother would want you to be practical. The irony of Aunt Brenda claiming to know what Mom would have wanted wasn't lost on me. The sisters had barely spoken in years, their relationship fractured by old resentments I never fully understood. As they headed for the door, Brenda paused, glancing back at the dusty display cases and empty tables. Such a shame, she sighed, not to me but to herself. Lily never did understand reality, always lost in flour and sugar while life passed her by. Something snapped inside me. Mom wasn't lost, I said, my voice shaking. She was building something meaningful, something that made people happy. And now she's finished, and you're alone with a failing business and no skills, Aunt Brenda replied coldly. That's reality, Emma. The sooner you accept it, the better. The bell above the door jingled as they left. Through the window, I watched them climb into Brenda's luxury SUV. Brandon already on his phone, Brenda talking animatedly as she gestured toward the interview they were headed to. I looked down at Mom's recipe book, then around at the empty bakery. Her legacy. Our home. My future if I could somehow save it. I'll show them. I whispered to the silence, my tears dried now, replaced by something harder and more determined. I'll make this place everything you dreamed it could be, Mom. I promise. Outside, Aunt Brenda's car pulled away from the curb. I couldn't hear her words anymore, but I didn't need to. They echoed in my head anyway. Dreams are for fools like you. I closed the recipe book and stood up straight, surveying the bakery with new eyes. Then maybe I'd be the biggest fool of all. The first eviction notice came 32 days after Mom's funeral. I stared at the bold red lettering, my hands trembling as I calculated the numbers for the 100th time. The bakery's account was empty. My personal account held exactly $143.27. The mortgage payment was $1,850, due in 3 days. I slid down against the wall of the cramped office, clutching the notice until it crumpled. This was the moment Aunt Brenda had predicted. The moment reality crushed my foolish dreams. Then I spotted Mom's recipe book on the desk. The faded cover seemed to glow in the dim light of the office lamp. I reached for it, flipping to a random page. Mom's handwriting stared back at me. Remember, Emma, dough needs time to rise. You can't rush it. But if you're patient and persistent, it never fails. Something clicked inside me. I wasn't ready to give up. The next morning, I walked into Santos Grocery at 5 a.m., asking for any work they could give me. By 2 p.m., I was waiting tables at Gino's Diner. By 9 p.m., I was stocking shelves at the 24-hour drugstore. 3 jobs, barely time to breathe between shifts, but the mortgage payment was made just barely, with a late fee attached. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I fashioned a makeshift bed in the bakery's storage room, using flour sacks as a mattress and old aprons as blankets. It wasn't comfortable, but it was home. You look like hell, said Mr. Castillo, the elderly owner of the hardware store 2 doors down, when I ran into him one morning. His eyes softened. Your mother would be worried seeing you like this. I'm fine, I lied, hiding my flour-covered sweatshirt under my waitressing apron. Just busy. He shook his head. The bakery's still closed. What are you doing in there all night? Learning. That's what I was doing. Every spare minute between shifts, I was teaching myself everything Mom hadn't had time to show me. I watched YouTube tutorials on my cracked phone screen while kneading dough at 2 a.m. I borrowed accounting books from the library and studied them during my breaks at the diner. I scribbled marketing ideas on napkins while waiting for the bus between jobs. My first attempts were disasters. I burned trays of croissants, overproofed loaves until they collapsed, and mixed up salt and sugar in a batch of cookies that made me gag when I tasted them. The old ovens were temperamental, requiring constant adjustments I hadn't mastered. Each failure felt like a confirmation of Aunt Brenda's words. Dreams are for fools like you. But I kept going. What choice did I have? 3 months in, I got a text from Brandon. Heard you're still playing bakery. Mom says to send pics when they auction the place off. LOL. I didn't reply. I was too busy figuring out the perfect temperature for Mom's sourdough loaves with the wonky oven dial that never showed the right reading. After 27 failed attempts, I finally created one that looked and tasted just like hers. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried, cradling that perfect loaf like it was made of gold. "You're crazy, you know that?" said Jess, a regular from Gino's Diner who'd stopped by the still-closed bakery to drop off some secondhand baking sheets she'd found. She'd become something like a friend, the only person besides Mr. Castillo who checked on me regularly. 3 jobs, sleeping on flour sacks, and you still think you can make this work? I have to, I said simply. 6 months in, disaster struck. The ancient walk-in refrigerator died overnight, spoiling $300 worth of butter and milk I'd scrimped and saved to buy. That same week, the bank called to warn me they were initiating foreclosure proceedings. I begged the loan officer for more time. "Please," I said, not too proud to let him hear the desperation in my voice. "I just need 3 more months. I have a plan." "Plans don't pay mortgages," he replied, but something in my voice must have reached him. 60 days. That's all I can give you." I hung up and slid to the floor, my back against the defunct refrigerator. For the first time since the funeral, I considered calling Aunt Brenda. Maybe she'd been right. Maybe I was just prolonging the inevitable. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another smug text from Brandon? I checked the screen and froze. It was a memory from Facebook, a photo from 2 years ago. Mom and me, covered in flour, laughing as we held up a tray of her famous raspberry chocolate scones. The caption read, "Teaching my girl that the secret ingredient is always love. Red heart, #Lily's Bakery, #future owner." I wiped my tears with flour-dusted fingers and stood up. No. I wouldn't call Aunt Brenda. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Instead, I sold my laptop and my small collection of vintage vinyl records, the only luxuries I had left. I fixed the refrigerator myself, following a repair video I'd watched 17 times. I painted the front of the bakery with leftover paint Mr. Castillo donated, staying up all night to finish it. 7 months after Mom died, I placed an "Opening Soon" sign in the freshly cleaned window of Lily's Bakery. The inside was still shabby, with mismatched furniture and chipped display cases, but it was clean. Ready. Mine. The night before opening day, I received another text from Aunt Brenda, the first direct message she'd sent since the funeral. "Heard you're actually opening that place. Don't come crying to me when you fail. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." I stared at her message for a long moment, then typed a response. "Thank you for the concern, Aunt Brenda. I'll be sure to save you a scone at the grand opening." Then I turned off my phone, tied on Mom's old apron, and began preparing the dough for tomorrow's bread. Outside, snow began to fall, coating the streets in white. Inside, the ovens warmed the small kitchen as yeast worked its magic in mixing bowls. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something dangerous. Hope. The dough was rising, and so was I. The first 3 months after reopening were a lesson in humility. Some days, I made just enough to cover the electricity bill. Other days, I'd sit alone behind the counter for hours, watching people walk past without a glance. I kept my 3 jobs, running between them with flour in my hair and exhaustion etched into my face. "You need something special," Mr. Castillo told me one frigid January morning, nursing the free coffee I gave him daily in exchange for his handyman help. "Something no other bakery has." I looked around at the empty tables and sighed. "I've tried everything, Mr. C. I've done loyalty cards, student discounts, early bird specials." No, he waved his hand dismissively. "Not gimmicks. Something authentic. Something that tells your story." His words stayed with me that night as I flipped through Mom's recipe book, searching for inspiration. Near the back, I found a page where the binding had come loose. Tucked inside was a yellowed note card I'd never seen before, in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Lillian, this recipe has been in our family for generations. Your grandmother made these every winter solstice. Now they're yours to carry forward. With love, Dad. Below was a recipe titled simply, Cinnamon Cloud Buns. My grandfather had died before I was born, and Mom rarely spoke of him. Finding his handwriting felt like discovering a family ghost. I touched the faded ink with reverence, then gathered the ingredients listed on the card. The recipe was complex, requiring a preferment that needed to rest overnight. It involved a technique I'd never tried, laminating the dough with a cinnamon cardamom butter, then shaping it into spiraled buns that resembled clouds when they rose. I worked until dawn, falling asleep on my flour sack bed with cinnamon-scented hands. The next morning, I pulled the buns from the oven just as snow began falling outside. The scent was intoxicating, warm cinnamon and cardamom, intertwined with buttery vanilla. The buns had risen into perfect, pillowy clouds, just as the recipe promised. When I broke one open, steam escaped in a fragrant puff. "Well?" Mr. Castillo asked when I brought him one, still warm. I watched anxiously as he took a bite. His eyes widened, then slowly closed. "Dios mío," he whispered. "Emma, this is magic." That day, I sold out of cinnamon cloud buns within hours. The next day, people returned, bringing friends. I added a small sign beside the display. Cinnamon cloud buns, a forgotten family recipe, rediscovered. Available only in winter. By the end of January, I had regular customers who came specifically for the buns. February brought enough business that I could quit the overnight stockroom job. March allowed me to reduce my waitressing hours. For the first time, the bakery was standing on its own. Barely, but standing. Then came the snowstorm in early April, a freak weather event that paralyzed the city and forced most businesses to close. I stayed open, walking 3 miles through knee-deep snow before dawn to fire up the ovens. Only 5 customers braved the weather that morning, including a young woman in a bright yellow coat who sat by the window, photographing her cinnamon cloud bun against the snowy backdrop. "Do you mind if I post this?" she asked, showing me the photo. Steam rising from the broken bun, snowflakes visible through the window behind it. "It's so aesthetically perfect." "Sure." I shrugged, too tired to care much about social media. I'd abandoned my own accounts months ago, tired of seeing Brandon's college adventures and Aunt Brenda's subtle digs at my quaint little project. The next morning, I arrived to find a line outside the door. Confused, I unlocked the bakery as 20 people stamped their feet in the cold, phones in hand. "Are you Emma?" asked a man at the front of the line. "The one who makes the cloud buns?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "Michaela Chin posted about this place last night," explained a woman behind him. "It's gone viral. Over 100,000 views already." I stared blankly. "Who's Michaela Chen?" The crowd laughed as if I'd told a joke. "Only the biggest food influencer in the state," someone explained. She said these were the best pastries she's ever tasted. Called this place a hidden gem with a soul. I rushed inside and began baking frantically, making double, then triple my usual batch. By noon, everything was sold out. By closing time, my phone was ringing with interview requests from local food blogs. By the following week, the line extended around the block every morning, rain or shine. One afternoon, while refilling the display case, I glanced up to see a familiar face at the back of the line, Sarah Jenkins, who'd been Brandon's girlfriend in high school. We'd never been friends. She'd always been firmly in the Cousin Crumbs mockery camp. "Emma," she exclaimed, approaching the counter with newfound warmth. "This place looks amazing. I had no idea you were so talented." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Brandon mentioned you were trying to save your mom's old bakery, but he never said you'd transformed it like this." I kept my expression neutral. "Did he?" "Oh, absolutely. In fact, your aunt was just telling my mom what a remarkable job you've done here." She sounded so proud. Something cold settled in my stomach. "Aunt Brenda said that? About me?" Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "She said you're the entrepreneurial spirit of the family. Said she always knew you had it in you." I nearly dropped the tray I was holding. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. The same woman who'd laughed at my dreams was now claiming to have supported them all along. That night, I noticed something new on my business Instagram account. At Lily's Bakery had gained hundreds of followers in recent weeks. Among them was at Brenda Miller Harris, who had liked every single post going back 6 months. The same posts that had existed during those months, she'd never once checked on me. During the nights I'd slept on flour sacks and worked myself to exhaustion. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text notification from Aunt Brenda herself, the first in over a year. "Emma dear, your success is all over social media. We're all so proud. We should catch up soon. Family is everything." I set the phone down without replying and looked around at my bakery. No longer empty, no longer failing. The local newspaper had run a feature on Lily's Bakery last week. A restaurant supplier had offered me a line of credit. And yesterday, a property developer had inquired whether I'd consider opening a second location in the trendy downtown district. Dreams are for fools like you. I smiled to myself as I counted the day's impressive earnings. Then maybe being a fool wasn't so bad after all. 5 years can change everything. I sat in my office on the second floor of Lily's flagship bakery, reviewing quarterly reports for our 4 locations. The space was nothing like the cramped, dusty back room where I'd once slept on flour sacks. This office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling bakery below, custom shelving displaying my collection of vintage baking tools, and a sleek desk made from reclaimed wood. On the wall hung the framed, yellowed recipe card for cinnamon cloud buns, alongside the first dollar I'd earned after reopening. Below them sat a small brass plaque, in memory of Lily Matthews, who taught me that love rises, even in the coldest winters. "Emma, the Tokyo investors are online too," my assistant Miguel called through the intercom. "And Chef Danny needs your final approval on the summer menu for the downtown location." I smiled, still not entirely used to having an assistant or being called Chef Emma by my staff of 36 bakers, servers, and managers. The business had grown beyond anything I could have imagined that snowy day when Michaela Chen's post went viral. We now had 4 thriving locations, a cookbook deal in the works, and international investors interested in bringing Lily's Bakery to Japan. Not bad for a fool with dreams. "Tell them I'll call back in 10, I replied, turning back to the spreadsheets on my tablet. At 22, I taught myself enough about business operations to negotiate supplier contracts that had reduced our costs by 18% last quarter. The community college business courses I now took 2 evenings a week were formalizing knowledge I'd gained through necessity. My phone buzzed with a notification. Probably Miguel with another question, or maybe Jess, who now managed our original location. Instead, the name on the screen made my hand freeze midair. Aunt Brenda. We hadn't spoken in person since Mom's funeral, though she'd made numerous attempts to reconnect after the bakery's success hit local news. I'd responded politely, but distantly to her occasional texts, maintaining what Miguel called a professional cordiality toward the woman who'd once mocked my dreams. The message read, "Emma, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about Brandon. Please call when you can. It's important." I set the phone down, a complicated mix of emotions churning inside me. Brandon. I'd seen him exactly once in the past 5 years, at a cousin's wedding 2 years ago. He'd been working at some prestigious financial firm in the city, wearing an expensive suit and speaking loudly about market projections to anyone who would listen. He'd acknowledged me with a curt nod, his eyes widening slightly at the changes 5 years had wrought in his once shabby Cousin Crumbs. I hadn't bothered to approach him. Some wounds heal, but they still leave scars. The phone buzzed again. "Please, Emma." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. Curiosity won out. I picked up the phone and dialed. "Emma?" Aunt Brenda's voice sounded different, strained, missing its usual crisp confidence. "Thank you for calling back. What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. A pause, then a sigh. "It's Brandon. He's in trouble. He lost his job 3 months ago. There was a situation at the firm." I waited, saying nothing. "A scandal, actually," she continued, her voice dropping. "Something about inappropriate trades, using client information. It wasn't entirely his fault. He was following directions from his supervisor, but, well, he was asked to leave quietly." I leaned back in my chair, watching the activity in the bakery below. Customers lined up for our signature pastries. A young couple laughed at one of the tables. A mother wiped chocolate from her daughter's chin. Life going on unchanged by this seismic shift happening in this conversation. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally, meaning it despite everything. "That must be difficult for him." "He's been blacklisted," Brenda said, her voice cracking slightly. "No one in finance will touch him now. He's been applying for jobs for months, but as soon as they check his references..." She trailed off. "We're struggling, Emma. Richard's medical bills have piled up since his heart attack last year, and with Brandon moving back home..." I closed my eyes. Uncle Richard had never been unkind to me, though he'd remained silent during Brenda's worst moments. I hadn't known about his heart attack. "What exactly are you asking me, Aunt Brenda?" Another long pause. "Brandon needs a job." The words rushed out now, rehearsed, but still awkward. "He's smart, Emma. Graduated with honors. He just needs a fresh start away from finance. And your business. It's grown so impressive. Surely there must be some positions suitable for someone with his education and background." The irony was so thick, I could almost taste it, like burnt sugar at the bottom of a pan. 5 years ago, this woman had stood in a crumbling bakery and told me to stop dreaming, to get a real job. Now she was begging me to give her golden boy a position in the business she dismissed as worthless. "I see," I said, keeping my voice measured. "And what does Brandon think about this idea?" "He's coming around to it," she admitted. "It's an adjustment, of course. He never imagined working in food service, but these are extraordinary circumstances." Food service. As if what I'd built was just a step above flipping burgers. Some things never changed. "Could we meet?" Brenda pressed when I didn't immediately respond. "Just to discuss possibilities?" "For family's sake." Family. The word hung between us, loaded with history and hurt. I thought of those early days after Mom died. The loneliness, the fear, the crushing weight of trying to survive while grieving. Not once had Aunt Brenda checked if I had food to eat or a proper place to sleep. Not once had she offered help, guidance, or even simple kindness. Family hadn't mattered then. But I also thought of Mom, who despite everything had never spoken ill of her sister, who had taught me that bitterness, like overproof dough, eventually collapses in on itself. "I can meet tomorrow," I heard myself saying. "Come by the flagship bakery at 10. We can have coffee in my office." "Oh, Emma, thank you." Relief flooded her voice. "We'll be there. Brandon and I both. You won't regret this. He's really quite talented." "I haven't offered anything yet," I cut in gently. "Let's just talk first." After ending the call, I stood by the window, watching customers enjoy the fruits of my 5 years of relentless work. The empire I'd built from nothing but flour, determination, and foolish dreams. Dreams are for fools like you. Tomorrow, the fool would face her critics once again. Only this time, from the other side of the desk. At precisely 9:58 the next morning, Miguel buzzed my office. "Ms. Miller-Harris and her son are here to see you." "Send them up in 5 minutes," I replied, taking a deep breath. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a tailored blazer over a simple black dress, accessorized with my mother's vintage watch. Professional, not ostentatious. When they entered, I barely recognized Brandon. The cocky teenager had been replaced by a gaunt young man, his designer suit slightly too large for his frame, his eyes missing their usual self-assured gleam. Aunt Brenda, however, looked almost the same. Blonde hair professionally highlighted, makeup impeccable despite the evident strain. "Emma," she breathed, taking in the office. "This is impressive." "Thank you," I said, gesturing to the chairs. "Please sit." "Coffee." They settled awkwardly as I poured from our special house blend. 5 years ago, I'd been the one avoiding eye contact, ashamed of my flour-covered clothes and uncertain future. The role reversal wasn't lost on me. "Your bakery empire is quite the talk," Brenda said, stirring sugar into her cup. 4 locations in 5 years. Very enterprising. 5, actually, I corrected gently. We're opening in the Harbor District next month. Brandon shifted uncomfortably. Congratulations, he muttered, the words sounding forced. So, Brandon, your mother mentioned you're looking for new opportunities? He looked up, defiance flashing in his eyes. Not my first choice, obviously, but circumstances. What Brandon means, Brenda interjected smoothly, is that he's eager for a fresh challenge. Something different from the high-pressure world of finance. We were thinking, she continued, her voice taking on that syrupy quality I remembered from childhood, that Brandon's business acumen would be perfect for a management position. Perhaps overseeing your flagship location? His Harvard degree and experience with corporate clients would bring a whole new level of professionalism to your operation. The audacity was stunning. They wanted me to hand over management of my most successful location to someone who had zero experience in food and had just been fired for ethical violations. I see, I said, keeping my expression neutral. And Brandon, what are your thoughts on working in a bakery? He straightened his tie. I think my skills are transferable. Management is management. Profit margins, staff oversight, customer retention. The principles are universal. Interesting perspective. I picked up a delicate milfy. Tell me, what's the hydration percentage in our signature sourdough? He blinked. The what? The hydration percentage. Basic baking knowledge. That's not really a management concern, is it? He stammered. That would be for the kitchen people. The bakers, I corrected. And yes, it's absolutely a management concern when you're running a bakery. Every decision stems from understanding our core product. Brenda leaned forward. Emma, dear, you're being a bit technical. Brandon would obviously learn these details over time. What's important is his exceptional leadership ability. He captained the rowing team at Harvard, you know. I studied them both. Would you mind following me? I'd like to show you something. I led them downstairs, through the crowded bakery where customers lined up 3 deep at the counter. Bakers worked in the open kitchen, visible through a glass partition, my design, intended to showcase the craftsmanship behind our products. This is truly charming, Brenda said, eyeing the decor. You've created such a quaint atmosphere. I stopped at the kitchen entrance. Brandon, I have a simple test. If you're interested in a management position here, you should understand our basic processes. I pushed open the door. I'd like you to make a loaf of sourdough bread. Just the basics. His face paled. Right now. Just the initial steps. Mix the starter, prepare the dough. Nothing complex. This is absurd, Brenda huffed. You don't ask a hospital administrator to perform surgery. No, I agreed. But I would expect them to understand what surgery entails. Baking is the heart of this business. Anyone who manages it needs to respect the craft. Reluctantly, Brandon followed me to a workstation. I placed ingredients before him: flour, water, salt, and a jar of sourdough starter. Go ahead. What followed was painful to watch. He awkwardly measured flour, spilling it across the counter. When he attempted to crack an egg, which wasn't even needed for sourdough, it shattered in his grip, yolk oozing onto his expensive shirt cuff. Damn it, he swore, face flushing as nearby bakers glanced over. This is ridiculous. I'm not applying to be a baker. No, I said quietly. You're applying to manage bakers. How can you lead what you don't understand? Back in my office, I closed the door. I'm afraid I can't offer you a management position, Brandon. You lack the fundamental knowledge required. This was a setup, Brenda snapped, her facade cracking. You never intended to give him a fair chance. Actually, I did. I hoped he might show curiosity, humility, a willingness to learn. Instead, I saw disdain for the very work that built this company. Brandon's jaw tightened. So that's it? You're turning me down because I can't bake bread? I'm turning you down because you believe you're above baking bread, I corrected. There's a difference. Brenda stood abruptly. After everything I've done for this family, this is how you repay me? Your mother would be ashamed. The words hit their target, but I was no longer the grieving 17-year-old who could be wounded so easily. What exactly have you done for this family, Aunt Brenda? I asked softly. When Mom was sick, when I was alone, when I was sleeping on flour sacks and working 3 jobs to keep this place from foreclosure? She flushed. I was giving you space to grieve. You were giving me space to fail. I corrected. You expected it. Counted on it. Dreams are for fools like you, isn't that what you said? Brandon looked between us, confused. Mom, what is she talking about? Brenda's mask cracked completely then. You ungrateful little. Who do you think you are? You're just a baker. A glorified cook playing at being a businesswoman. Mom, Brandon looked mortified. You think you're so special because you've had a little success? Your mother wasted her life in this place, and now you're doing the same. It's pathetic. I stood, calm but firm. I think this meeting is over. We're leaving, Brenda spat, grabbing her purse. Come on, Brandon. We don't need her charity. As they reached the door, I spoke one last time. Brandon. He turned, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and resentment. I do have a position available, I said quietly. Not in management, but it's honest work with fair pay. His eyes narrowed. What kind of position? I met his gaze steadily. Night janitor. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. A chance to learn this business from the ground up, literally. The shock on both their faces was worth every hardship I'd endured to reach this moment. A janitor? And Brenda's voice rose an octave. Brandon has a Harvard degree. I maintain my composure. The position starts at $18 an hour. Health benefits after 90 days. It includes thorough training in bakery operations, essential knowledge for anyone who might someday want to progress in this industry. Brandon's face cycled through emotions, shock, humiliation, and then, unexpectedly, consideration. You can't be serious, Brenda hissed. This is revenge, plain and simple. This is an opportunity, plain and simple. One more than you ever offered me. Brandon, we're leaving, she snapped. I knew this was a mistake. But Brandon didn't move. When would I start? He asked quietly. Brandon, Brenda gasped. What, Mom? He looked up. What exactly are my options? No one in finance will hire me. Our savings are running out. Dad's medical bills keep coming. What do you suggest I do? You would start Monday, I said. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. Miguel will handle your paperwork. He's not taking this insult of a job, Brenda declared. Actually, I am, Brandon replied. I need work, Mom. Any work. He turned to me. I'll be here Monday night. Brenda's face flushed crimson. After everything we've sacrificed for you? The tuition, the connections, and now you'll be scrubbing toilets in your cousin's bakery? How will I explain this to everyone? The question hung in the air, revealing exactly what had always mattered most to her, appearances. Perhaps, I suggested mildly, the same way you explained my little baking project to everyone 5 years ago. I believe your exact words to Mrs. Jenkins were that I was wasting my life on cookies and sadness. Brenda's eyes widened. You heard that. Small towns, big gossip. I shrugged. Word gets around. I never meant. You meant every word. I interrupted, my voice gentle but firm. And that's okay. You taught me an invaluable lesson, Aunt Brenda. You showed me exactly who not to become. I opened the door. Miguel will email the paperwork. Business casual is fine, Brandon. No need for the suit. After they left, I walked downstairs to the bakery floor. The morning rush had subsided, leaving a pleasant hum of conversation and the rich scent of fresh bread. I approached the register where a new sign had recently been installed, elegant gold lettering against vintage wood. Never stop dreaming, even when they say you should. I touched the sign briefly, remembering every late night, every failure, every small victory that had led to this moment. Then I tied on an apron and joined the bakers in the kitchen. Monday night arrived, and with it, Brandon, dressed in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt. Your uniform, I said, handing him a set of navy work clothes with the Lily's logo. Ray will be training you. He's been with us since the beginning. Brandon nodded. Thank you for the opportunity. The sincerity in his voice surprised me. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said. Even those who never gave first chances to others. Ray appeared with a mop and bucket. Ready to learn the ropes, Harvard? Brandon grimaced but nodded. Ready. Later that night, I passed through the kitchen and paused. Brandon was on his hands and knees, scrubbing a stubborn spot on the floor, sweat beading on his forehead. Ray approached him. "First night's always the hardest. You'll toughen up." "I didn't think it would be this physical," Brandon admitted. "Chef Emma cleaned these same floors for 2 years before she could afford to hire help," Ray said. "Did it after working 3 other jobs all day. Never complained once." Brandon looked up, surprised. "She did. You think all this happened by magic?" Ray gestured around the gleaming kitchen. "She built this place 1 scrubbed floor at a time." I slipped away, a small smile playing on my lips. To everyone's surprise, most of all mine, Brandon stuck it out. Not just 2 shifts, as I predicted, but weeks, then months. His work was impeccable, his attitude gradually shifting from resentment to determination. Aunt Brenda avoided all family gatherings where I might be present. But occasionally, customers mentioned seeing her peering through the bakery windows, watching her son work. After 3 months, Brandon approached me, uniform neat, but his hands now bearing calluses. "I've been studying the recipe book in the break room," he said, "and watching the morning bakers before I clock out. I'd like to apply for the apprentice baker position that just opened." I raised an eyebrow. "It's harder work than cleaning. Longer hours, earlier mornings." "I know." He straightened his shoulders. "I want to learn. Really learn." I studied him, looking for traces of the arrogant cousin who'd once mocked my flour-covered clothes. Instead, I saw someone changed by humility and hard work. "The position starts tomorrow," I said. 5 a.m. sharp. 6 months later, Brandon created his first original recipe, a rosemary olive loaf that sold out before noon. I found him afterward, staring at his flour-dusted hands with something like wonder. "I never understood," he said quietly, "what it felt like to create something real. Something people line up to buy because it makes them happy." "Now you do," I replied. That evening, I updated the sign in all 5 bakery locations. Below the line about never stopping dreaming, I added, "Success is the sweetest revenge, but forgiveness makes the recipe complete." The following Sunday, I was finishing inventory when the bakery door chimed. We were closed, but I'd forgotten to lock up. I stepped out from the kitchen to find Aunt Brenda standing awkwardly by the display case. "We're closed," I said. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I know. She took a deep breath. "Brandon says you're opening a 6th location, that you're looking for an office manager." I waited, saying nothing. "I did accounting before I married Richard," she said. "I was good at it." She finally looked up. "Brandon says you gave him a chance." I wondered if. Her voice trailed off, pride wrestling with desperation. I considered her. This woman who had mocked my dreams, who had abandoned me at my lowest, who had raised a son to value status over substance. But also a woman now humbled by circumstance, standing in the very bakery she'd once dismissed. "The position requires training," I said finally. "Starting at the bottom, learning every aspect of the business." "I understand," she whispered. "Monday, 8 a.m., I said. "Don't be late." As she turned to leave, I added, "And Brenda? Leave the designer purse at home. We're a working bakery, not a fashion show." For a moment, the old haughtiness flashed in her eyes. Then, surprisingly, she laughed, a genuine sound I hadn't heard since childhood. "Yes, boss," she said and walked out the door. I returned to the kitchen, running my fingers over Mom's recipe book. "Well, Mom," I whispered to the empty bakery, "you always said family was like sourdough, sometimes bitter, sometimes sweet, but always rising in the end. Sometimes revenge isn't about making others fail. Sometimes it's about rising so high they can't help but look up and see what they missed by underestimating you, and then, if they're truly ready, offering them a hand up too."